A blessed day to everyone. Today I'm going to present the revisions I made in my paper as per the suggestion of the panel members during my last presentation. Particularly, the revisions made are in the areas of conceptual framework, the analysis and interpretation of data, summary findings, conclusions, and recommendations. But before I discuss the major revisions, it was also suggested by the panel to include the title page, the acknowledgement, abstract, and table of contents in my next presentation. So here I have included in the third slide and the fourth slide to show you the title page, the acknowledgement, and then the abstract and the table of content. For the conceptual framework, it was suggested by Dr. Penetrante to add additional tourist respondents in my paper and also to separate the data of service providers from the tourism respondents. Previously, the research only had 44 respondents, 25 coming from the service providers and tourists, and then 17 coming from the Sangguniang Bayan members, and then 2 responses from the tourism officer and the researcher herself. The new data has 61 respondents now, 32 coming from tourists, and then 10 from service providers, 17 from Sangguniang Bayan members, and 2 from the researcher and the tourism officer. In the old accessibility data, the overall mean is 3.56, which could be interpreted as moderately accessible, while in the new data, the accessibility based on service provider survey, the overall mean is 3.30, which could be interpreted as less accessible. And then for the accessibility based on tourist survey, the overall mean is 3.52 or moderately accessible. For the accommodation, the previous data shows a 3.67 mean, which has an interpretation of highly available. While in the new data, the accommodation based on the response of service providers, the overall mean is 3.60 or moderately available, while in the accommodation based on tourist survey, the overall mean is 3.75, which could be interpreted as highly available. And then for the attractions, the previous data shows an overall mean of 3.86, which could be interpreted as highly available. In the new data, the attraction based on service provider survey, the overall mean is 3.99, which is interpreted as highly available. And based on tourist survey, the attraction is rated with an overall mean of 3.98, which could be interpreted as highly available. Now let's look at the summary. In the previous summary, the overall mean combining the 3 indicators, the overall mean is 3.70, which has an interpretation of high potential. In the new data, the new summary indicates an overall mean of 3.63 in the service provider survey, which has an interpretation of moderate potential, while under the tourist survey, the overall mean is 3.75, which could be interpreted as high potential. As you can see in the new summary, the service providers view accommodations differently than the tourists. Although the tourists see it as having a high potential, this could also indicate that improvements must be done in the accommodation sector on the island. Overall, this still implies that Cuyo Island has the potential and capability to become a tourist destination. For the strategies, these are the strategies that the LGU of Magsaysay and Cuyo can implement. The first one is introduction of sustainable tourism products, and then destination branding, market penetration and increased publicity efforts, product developments and improve existing services, improvement of general image by investment into IT and online presence, and improve guest satisfaction through better government intervention. For the conclusions, Cuyo Islands have natural attractions ranging from beaches, mountains, lagoons, islands, and islets. However, policymakers seldom see it as an option for increasing economic growth. They have no well defined competitiveness plan for Cuyo because they have not been provided with adequate evidence that once Cuyo is developed, they would be assured of the significant return on investment. So, this is an explanation behind the absence of a market positioning for Cuyo. Although Cuyo Islands have some weaknesses such as accessibility, there are ways to address it with the support of the local government. What is more important is having identified Cuyo Islands as having a high potential as a tourist destination. The beauty of Cuyo Islands come from its natural resources, something which would only necessitate infrastructure projects to become accessible and the creation of more services and amenities to meet the needs of tourists. Cuyo Islands are way behind Boracay when it comes to accessibility and accommodations, but it can offer a different kind of experience to the sightseers. Since local governments of Cuyo and Magsaysay are willing to develop Cuyo Islands as a tourist destination, this paper is a useful reference for their tourism development plan. For the recommendations, the researcher recommends that the local governments of Cuyo and Magsaysay should focus their branding and promoting natural attractions in their respective areas. Also, the presence of historical sites could encourage other types of travelers. The Philippine Islands have a lot to offer, and tourists are looking for a unique experience. So, therefore, Cuyo Islands must promote its primary and most unique attraction, which can be kiteboarding. It can brand itself as the kiteboarding destination in Asia, like Siargao, which is now world famous for being the surfing capital of the Philippines. And then, thirdly, accessibility, since accessibility is the main hindrance to the success of tourism in the area. It is recommended that the local governments of Cuyo and Magsaysay enter a public-private partnership with airline companies to improve the transportation on the island. Also, since there's a high potential, the researcher recommends the local governments of Cuyo and Magsaysay to take this opportunity to develop Cuyo Islands as a tourist destination. So the infrastructure and basic amenities, particularly the transportation and accommodations, need to be improved to essentially sustain tourism on the islands. Next, it is also suggested to adopt the strategies formulated in SWOT matrix, like the introduction of sustainable tourism products, destination branding, market penetration and increased publicity efforts, product development and improve existing facilities, improvement of general image by investment into IT and online presence, and improve guest satisfaction through better government intervention. Lastly, the researcher recommends that the LGUs of Cuyo and Magsaysay and other agencies should work together to improve tourism on the island. A tourism master plan is needed to achieve this goal. The local tourism office should also improve and have more effort in creating coordinated activities for tourism to flourish. They should also be knowledgeable and have plans in promoting tourism in order to attain a competitive advantage. That ends my presentation. Thank you for listening, and God bless us all.